Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals about the fact that the bench press and the deadlift are evidence-based hypertrophy exercises. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I'd appreciate it so much. Thank you. So here's the thing, guys. We see a bunch of these people in some of these evidence-based circles, and I want people to be clear. I want to be clear on this. These handful of YouTubers and influencers who have some scientific background do not represent the entirety of exercise science when it comes to hypertrophy. They just don't. And for some reason, a lot of these circles have decided that they're going to promote lazier training, right? It's this whole idea of, well, we can just do lots and lots and lots of volume and never train hard. Okay? Never train hard, never do anything near failure, and, get people really jacked. Keeping in mind while they're all using plenty of gear too on top of it, but so they come up with these ideas like the stimulus to fatigue. And I'm not saying stuff like this is a bad idea. But when it gets taken to the extreme, it's not the case of, hey, every exercise you do, we need to be looking at stimulus to fatigue. Because we're forgetting that all the best stimulus exercises are high fatigue. Okay? And so what we need to also think about in terms of evidence-based, number one, exercise science is not very good in terms of hypertrophy. Bad science, not the most gifted researchers, right? Brilliant researchers don't generally go into that field. I've heard that criticism made. They just don't care. Lack of funding, low quality studies, low sample sizes. These are actual real problems. But that aside, here's the thing that people need to realize. When it's actually studied, you don't even have evidence, and this is meta-analysis, is saying, yeah, compound movements cause just as much muscle growth as isolation movements in the target muscles. What? That's what meta-analysis is saying. There's no difference. So this also throws out the whole stimulus to fatigue with all of it big time, because that literally means the big exercises cause as much growth. So if there was a stimulus to fatigue problem, these studies would be showing. So this is what people are missing. If the stimulus to fatigue was a real concern, then there would not be as much muscle growth, because the fatigue would be too high to stimulate maximum growth. But that's just not the case. Okay, that's not the case. And I'm not saying, when people say, oh, well, some power lifters don't have as big a quads. Well, a lot of times they're doing a super wide power squat where they don't go that deep. They're using D-wraps, stuff like that. Okay, keep that in mind. Stuff that's going to take some tension off the quad. Right, so just keep that in mind. Plenty of people built their legs off squats. Some of the best legs in bodybuilding even were built off back squats as a primary. Just throwing that out there. Don't listen to this nonsense. But the same when it comes to these other big movements. Look, the research says there's no difference. This kind of throws out the window the idea of stimulus to fatigue being that big of a deal. Okay, because again, otherwise it would show that the lower fatigue exercises cause more growth. They don't. So it's kind of like this core, we have a something that we're looking at. Well, we have a pathway of concern, but it doesn't appear in the larger data. Does that make sense? Just like when people say, oh, well, there's a possible pathway of concern why broccoli might be harmful, but then you look at studies and it shows that people who eat more broccoli have less cancer and heart disease and stuff, right? They live longer. Well, if it was a real problem, we would see it reflected in the data. And it's the same with this. If the stimulus fatigue was actually a big deal other than just a hypothesis, we wouldn't see so many studies where the compound movements cause just as much muscle growth in the target muscles, right? Yet we do. All right, same thing when we start actually looking. So people who actually go look at data, you guys telling me the bench press doesn't cause amazing muscle growth in studies? Really? Well, what causes more muscle growth? Show me studies where other exercises beat the bench press for chest or even long head or lateral head of the tricep. I mean, the only studies that compared it with extensions in terms of growth found the lateral head grew more from the bench press than it does from extensions. And the long head grew more from the other. But, again, keep in mind, volumes go high enough, that goes away. Intensity goes high enough, that goes away. Because look at the EMG data. The more intense the bench press set gets, the more the long head gets activated. So those were higher rep sets with fairly low volume. But, the workloads get high enough, even that could go away. But it consistently did that. Show me studies where other exercises cause more total chest growth than the bench press. I'll wait. See what I mean? So people are like, well, it's not the great. Well, really? Where do you have proof of that? You don't even have anecdote. Bodybuilders from the 50s and 60s who lived on the bench press had better pecs relative to their proportions than bodybuilders do today, who do all these other movements. So there's not even real world evidence, let alone scientific evidence. Same thing when it comes to deadlifts. Really? Anybody ever looked at the little bit of limited hypertrophy data on the deadlift? Okay, so when someone says, oh, the deadlift's not great for hypertrophy or great for muscle activity, really? I think hypertrophy and EMG data both show pretty consistently the deadlift is an absolute monster for both muscle activation and growth. And I'm not saying, again, EMGs are the be-all, end-all, but those EMG studies, man, they really, really show the deadlift. It actually showed deadlifts to be the best lat exercise they could find in terms of EMG activation. And I'm not saying you're going to get the best lats from the deadlift. I'm not saying that. Just keep that in mind. The muscle activation is very high. But when it's been looked at in terms of size, the deadlift caused enormous amounts of growth. If we went off the limited data we have studying that, we could say the deadlift is quite possibly just about the best hypertrophy exercise ever invented. Granted, we need a lot more data. So it's very limited data on that, but it all shows the tiny bit we have out there when you start digging shows massive potential. So what are these people talking about when they're like, well, these are not good? Really? Compared to what? And plenty of coaches in the real world who have backgrounds in this stuff. I get people big on these exercises. We use the classic lifts for hypertrophy just fine. There's no problem with it. And then if people want to say, well, we're talking just competitive bodybuilding because there haven't been tons of Mr. Olympias who did the big three. Exactly. You don't have real world or scientific evidence against this. The people who are promoting this idea are just promoting being lazy because they're lazy people in the gym. It's that simple.